Hello, my name is Barty, and welcome to the MySaw workshop. Today we're going to do some shop talk about these two router bits. These are the Whiteside Ultimate Trim bits. These I purchased a while back in preparation for building my big workbench, and just ended up doing a lot of other projects with them and finding them useful in a lot of places. They have some unusual, they are carbide. They have a compression technology which just leaves an incredibly fine edge on whatever you're trimming. I'm going to show you 5 examples today of how I have used these. Some of these are older stuff, so they're actually pictures that I've put into the video and done a narrative over. And I hope you'll get some ideas and see how you like them. So let's get started and look at these examples. I'm using the top of the sewing cutting table to demonstrate a standard flush trim operation. This has been expanded to 1.5 inches thick by adding 3/4 inch strips of plywood to the back of it, as you can see here. When I glued these on, I glued them on about a 1/16 inch proud of the edge there that you can see me pointing out with my fingers. Marking this for you so you can see what happens when the flush trim bit comes across this surface here. This is the ultimate Whiteside flush trim bit that we're going to use with the bottom bearing that will ride on that surface. We're just installing the flush trim bit into the 1/2 inch DeWalt 618 router. I'm using the 2 wrench method here with the motor removed. It makes it just much easier to do and get a good tight grip on it there. Go put it back in its base. And then I'm going to set an initial depth that I think is right and lock it down. Check that on the actual edge there. You can see that the cutter surface is over the top 3/4 inches and the router bearing is going to be on the bottom 3/4 inch piece. So let's go. You can see I'm using an extended router base here from the Router Man. That extended base just gives you a lot of flat surface to keep the router perpendicular to the surface. One of the problems when doing flush trimming is you need for the router to be exactly perpendicular all the time, especially when you're cutting something this thick. And we're going to see this go across the edge there and actually cut off, trim the top piece. You can see no tear out on there. And we see the marks left on the bottom, which means it's tracking exactly. This next flush cut is to size the base of the units exactly to the constructed base of all the 3 pieces. So here I'm lining up the base so it has about a 1/16 inch proud or so on all edges. Checking that to make sure I've got it on all the edges equally. We'll screw this all down temporarily to the base unit so that we've got this exactly aligned on all sides of the base. You can see I have the Ultimate Flush trim bit installed here and adjusted so that we're actually going to use the cabinet edge as the flush trim surface. And here we are making our cut coming across. I've got the lines drawn so you can see the effect of this first pass. As we go across it, we've trimmed the middle 3/4 layer, which is part of the base, and up into the other part of the base there. I'm going to mark this again so you can just see the effect of the next cut. So there's the underneath of the last cut, and this is the part we're going to be cutting off on the next cut. We're going to come across our trim bit riding on the surface we just created, and it's taking off that little lip on the top there. You can see that the 2 layers of the base now are completely flush with the cabinet edge. As part of the big workbench build that I completed a few months ago, there was a requirement for a mortise for each leg to key into on the bottom of the bench. Each of these mortises were to be exactly the same distance from the edge. I began this process by laying these out very carefully, and you can see the measurements that I have there. So this was laid out to the exact size of the tenons. I started by building a template jig utilizing pocket hole screws. that was set to the exact size of the requirements for the mortise. Notice there's a lot of surface area on top of this jig. This allows the fixed base router to have a lot of surface to contact and remain perpendicular in the hole. With the jig completed, I test fitted them on one of the tenons on one of the legs. As you can see, it fit very nicely. I didn't need a very tight fit, but I wanted a good fit for the legs to go into. Since each mortise was going to be exactly the same distance from the side of the table, what you see there is a piece of wood that would become the fence that the template would attach to. So using some clamps, I set the template on top of the fence, got it positioned exactly on top of my measured drawing on top of the bench there, and put some screws in it. So I had a completed template that could be used for each mortise. Each mortise started out by using a drill to put a 1-inch hole in the middle of it. I had decided to use my fixed base router for this operation. It just seemed like it'd be easier and would work just fine. You can see the fixed base router sitting down in the hole flush on top of the template. The large base plate helps keep this perpendicular completely and very easily to move around on this. Note the bar clamps on either side of the template. These bar clamps were against the fence that I had attached that held the fence directly against the side of the workbench. This ensured that each of the mortises were cut exactly the same distance from the side of the workbench. Here we go, routing. Makes a mess, of course. I did make a mistake here. I pushed the router too hard. This is a flush trim bit. I should not be hogging out the entire hole with this, which I did, and actually pushed the router too far and burned the bearing on it. I should have drilled multiple holes and gotten as close to the edge as I could with my drill, and then simply used the trim bit to trim the edge up to the exact dimensions. So here we are at the end. You can see, as I showed you earlier, this is the mortise that got cut. It turned out extremely well. And you can see with the test fit of the leg into that mortise, it was right on. So this was another example of how to use that Ultimate Flush Trim bit. Let's look at another. Another part of the workbench build was to create square dog holes. This was accomplished by routing a cut into one of the 16 boards that made up the top. So we made the holes really from the side of the board. Here is my exact template that I drew from the plans provided so I could envision how this would look. I built the template sort of piece by piece, continually referring to the exact plan that I had, as you can see here. There was a lot of measuring and checking and double checking as I put this thing together, as you can see here. The template was designed to actually straddle the board that we would be routing, so I built some fences underneath it that would guide it against the edge of the board. I set up both routers, the fixed base with the trim bit, and the plunge router with a bit to hog out most of the material so I could do it in multiple passes using the plunge feature. Plunge router was set up with a collar so I could have an 1/8 inch offset, and then the 3-fluted carbide bit to do the real hog out of most of the material. The fixed base was set up with the ultimate trim bit, which would do the final 1/8 of an inch cut all the way around. Here you can see the basic setup set on a test piece of wood that I had to try to make sure everything was okay. Here you can see the template clamped down to the workbench, and also the clamps with the red handles were holding the template fence against the board that would be routed so that we had registration exactly where we wanted it. First pass was with the plunge router, and this was a first level cut. Several of them had to clean all the metal out there. Then on the second level you can see I'm setting the stepper so that it'll go all the way through in the second cut. And this is speeded up. So we now got that roughed out to 1/8 of an inch within the edges there. And we'll use the Ultimate trim bit here, basically just in one pass. And this will be in real time so you can actually see how quickly and easily this happened. We're just riding on the edge of the template there with the bearing, go all the way through to the other side, come back down, and we've got it finished. And here's what you ended up with. These dog holes are really nice and perfectly formed, and are just a great part of the workbench today. So let's see what our next example is going to be. This next example of the Ultimate flush trim bit has to do with perfectly flattening the tail vise end of my workbench. The other end of the workbench I had aligned as I glued the sections up, the 4 sections that got put together to make the top, ultimately. And so it was okay, but this end was very much out of line and had to be straightened. My first attempt at doing this, and it was halfway successful as you can see, was to use my skill saw with a guide clamped to the bench to make a cut that would be exactly straight and trim. Well, that cut is actually on the bottom of what you're seeing in the picture here. I cut it and then flipped it over. And I tried to make a second cut, but it was not highly unsuccessful, but it was not successful. I was off about 1/16 of an inch, and as skill saws do sometimes, it got hot and did some weird things on the other end, and you'll see that in the picture later. So I needed to align the other half, this top half that you're looking at, to the bottom half. So if you've already seen in the other examples of the Ultimate flush trim bit, this is an easy job. Using the fixed base router with the extended base on it, I was able to keep the router perfectly perpendicular and have the roller bearing roll against the first cut, which was a really good cut, and would make 2 passes here. You're seeing it set up for the first pass. This is what the far right hand end looked after the first pass. The nice clear stuff below the black was the result of the first pass of the flush trim bit, and the black stuff is what happened with the skill saw, as I described earlier. It was a real mess. So we'll just make a second pass and clean this all up. This is going to ultimately turn out to be perfectly flat, and then the end plate for the tail vise would bolt against this, and this really would never be seen again. So you've seen 5 examples of what these Whiteside Ultimate trim bits can do. Hope this was interesting to you and you might have learned something along the way. If you did, how about subscribing up here to my channel? Lots more stuff coming. I also have a website, MySaw.com, where you'll find a lot of projects, shop projects that have been completed over the years, and a lot of pictures and helpful hints there to might interest you. So y'all get in the shop. Have some fun, be safe, take care of yourselves. And thank you for watching today.